the News Channel 5 network, this is MorningLine with Nick Beres.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here with you on a Wednesday. A good show on tap for you today. We're going to get into the very latest of what we're learning about the Antioch situation, the Antioch church shooting, the accused suspect in that case, Emmanuel Sampson. And if you've been paying attention, if you're a viewer of this station, you know that we obtained exclusive phone calls, more than 140 of them made by the suspect from his jailhouse over the past month. Some very, very interesting things in there. I continue right now to go over this. Some of these calls are more than a half hour each. But we've aired two stories with that regard over the past couple of days. We're going to air those for you again. We're going to take your phone calls, and we're going to delve into the legalities of all this with News Channel 5 legal analyst Nick Leonardo.
Good morning.
Back at it. It's good to see you. You look dapper. I'm more cash today. Hope that's all right, but that's just the way it is. I'm a little more casual today. Also want to say, in addition to being live on the Plus, we're streaming this program live on newschannel5.com on Facebook. I'm going to dial that up here in a second, and we'll be following that. So if you want to call in with any questions, or if you want to message us on Facebook, we'll take your questions. But Nick, and I came and talked to you about this yesterday. We're going to be doing more on these tapes. Real quickly, just from the legal aspect, if you know the backstory behind these tapes, I obtained them legally by putting in a request for it. It was provided legally through the proper procedures by the sheriff's department. I guess I was the only one that thought to do it.
Obviously.
Since then, not only other local media, but national media has sought to get hold of them. They haven't been able to because the attorneys for Sampson, their public defenders, have filed motions challenging the release of these tapes, claiming that doing so could damage his right to a fair trial. The judge yesterday sealed all the tapes off. No more can be released to anyone else, but we're okay to keep using ours for the judge. But she'll decide more on it on Monday, perhaps. But they're sealed off now.
I hadn't heard that. That's news.
And that's something that's happened. The arguments there's several going on. But what's your take on this?
Well, which judge, do you know?
Yeah, this is. I was there yesterday. I almost got called to testify, but didn't have to. Judge Blackburn.
Okay.
Yeah, Judge Cheryl Blackburn, who I have a lot of respect for, and I think she has said that there has to be a compelling case made that these audio tapes are damaging, but no one has listened to them but me and our viewers who have heard my stories that we're going to show you in just a moment. But they're sealed. I mean, there's national media that wants these. All the other local stations want these. I'm all for open records. I don't want them shutting down phone calls from inmates. But as it sits right now, I don't mind being the only one with these calls.
That helps,
as you can imagine. That's right now. But the big picture, I want other media to get hold of these audio tapes as well. What do you think? The legal challenge coming from his attorneys. Look, the inmates know they're being recorded. If they're dumb enough to talk about their case on the phone, knowing they're being recorded, you give up privacy when you go to jail.
Well, I think so. I don't think there's a reasonable expectation of privacy within jail phone calls. I was actually having a video conference with another inmate yesterday in the Department of Corrections in Trousdale County. We had this exact conversation about talking on the phone.
What'd you tell him?
I said, since you've been convicted, they've probably left you alone, but now that we're back in court, chances are they're probably going to be listening to your phone calls. Yeah. And so you just know that going forward that there's a reasonable likelihood that the state may very well be listening to your phone calls. Now that's very interesting for the judge to make a ruling like that. I mean, the defendant is entitled to a fair trial, just like the state's entitled to a fair trial. But obviously, he should know that talking on the phone, those things are recorded. We see it all the time. I mean, all the time on a regular basis. So it was very interesting. I have to talk to you more about this hearing yesterday. So you were subpoenaed to the hearing?
No, I wasn't subpoenaed. Okay. I went with our attorney. The attorneys were there for other local media. The DA, Glenn Funk, was there. Okay, the DA weighed in on this as well, along with the defense attorneys, public defenders.
What was the state's position on that?
The state's position is more or less that they would like to see further vetting, as I understood it, of jailhouse phone calls before they're released. And it looks like they're going toward right now the debate of whether or not, when a request comes in from the media, that the judge gets the material first and reviews it to see if there's something in there too damaging to release to the video, which bothers me. And if that happens, I mean, there's going to be legal challenges to that. But they seem to kind of be ambivalent, but kind of stay a little bit with what the defense was saying about wanting to restrict the release, even though prosecution is going to use these tapes. The defense, on the other hand, and by the way, folks, this isn't the first time. Wait, we all, not just me but other media, got hold of the phone calls from Brandon Vandenberg.
That's right.
There wasn't a fuss made at that point, but for whatever reason this time the defense attorneys have challenged it. But, you know, it's too late. Moot point. We've done 2 stories already. Cat's out of the bag. I've got more of those tapes I'm going to be listening to, and there will be more stories.
Well, and obviously it was legal because it's been going on forever. You made a FOIA.
Right.
You made a FOIA. I don't know.
Oh, that was vetted yesterday in court. This was not something that I got illegally or was slipped to me under the table. We went through the proper channels every step of the way, and the sheriff's department did everything right under the law. I just got it, but now they're challenging it. So, but they lost in court twice.
Well, I mean, unless they're talking to their lawyer on the phone, otherwise I think it's all fair game. There's no privilege associated with it.
There's no lawyer calls on there.
It's a slippery slope when you start, you know, prohibiting that kind of release of information. I mean, where does it stop?
Yeah.
And so that's very, very interesting. I would think that there may be even a challenge to that court's ruling at a higher level.
And there may be. Well, the bottom line is I believe the public has a right to hear these calls. We want to know as much as we can about Emmanuel Sampson, the man who's accused in this horrible case. Let's take a look at these pieces. We've got the first one, and they're fairly quick, but pay attention. The first one really, in my opinion, gives you just more of a sense of his mindset, what he sounds like. No one's heard from him. He's waived all his court appearances. Here's the first piece with some of the phone calls from the jailhouse. 25-year-old Emmanuel Sampson is being held right here at the Davidson County Jail, and he has said very little to police, but he is doing plenty of talking by telephone, and all of those calls inside the jail are recorded. We have copies of those calls. Take a listen.
This honestly reminds me of our childhood. You know, you're locked in a room or in a house. Hey, real shit, bro. You know, you're locked in a room, locked in your house.
Sampson's now spent the past month in the county jail, held without bond, and in this call, he seems to be settling in.
You know, it's about meditating on the fact that, hey, I literally can't afford to not be strong. Period. You know, it's about, and that's by any means necessary.
Sampson's made more than 140 calls in the past month, mostly collect to friends and family. It seems he's been warned by his attorney not to talk about his case, though he may, at times, speaking in what sounds like his native Sudanese. So, Sampson won't discuss the murder of Melanie Crow Smith or the other potential felony charges to come. In conversations, especially with a girlfriend, both she and Sampson seem oblivious to the seriousness of the charges against him.
Please dream about me, baby. I'm dreaming about you every night. It's like, oh, baby, we had so many plans for our future, you know?
And we still do.
Plans, baby.
Don't say we did. We still do. I'm trying to keep my mind positive.
There were reports that Sampson was suicidal in the months before the shooting at Burnett Chapel Church of Christ. In one call, Sampson talked about the gunshot wound he suffered to the leg during a scuffle with the church usher. There was a lot of blood. He thought he might die.
When that happened, did you think, okay, this is it, I'm leaving, this is it?
Yeah.
Did it feel good?
Did what feel good? Leaving?
I guess to think that you were, yeah.
In a sense, in a way, in terms of pain, you know.
Investigators have pointed to Sampson's troubled past. Sampson himself talked about something he called vibrating energies, referring to a depressing childhood.
Yeah, that's how we have these low vibrating energies within us now, about the depressive, the sad, the sorrow, because we grew up in a very low vibrating household, always drama.
Sampson also talked on the phone about everything from his favorite video games to how a friend was doing in school. Not once did I hear him tell a family member or friend that he was responsible for this horrible crime. In Nashville, Nick Beres, News Channel 5. All right, so that gives you a brief taste, if you will, of what his mindset's like. Just hearing him on the phone calls, I think, is interesting. And then, you know, him and many of the calls are to his girlfriend. And she's fawning. And I get the sense, listening to a lot of this, that the two of them have absolutely no clue about just how serious the charge is against him. And I don't know what his defense is going to be. But, I mean, they're just clueless. A lot of the calls, they're just laughing at. He's talking about video games and what he's doing behind bars and how he's going to be getting out soon. And I'm like, dude, do you know what you're charged with?
It doesn't sound like they understand. The first piece I saw, you know, didn't sound like they understand. And also, have you had any kind of a translator, a Sudanese translator?
We're working on that. In fact, as a matter of fact, if you can translate Sudanese, there are several phone calls that he is speaking in his native language.
There's a reason for that, I would submit.
Yeah. Now, do you imagine that if he's doing that saying things that he hopes other people won't understand? Because he has to understand that if law enforcement wants to figure it out, they're going to find an interpreter as well. I got the sense that at least when he's talking to his father, I think his father's more fluent in Sudanese than
correct.
English.
Sure.
And so he chooses to just talk that way, and he's not really hiding anything, but I want to find out what he's saying. Oh, we're working on that.
Because if he's going back and forth with the language, that would suggest he knows he's being recorded and there's something he's saying that he should, doesn't want out there.
We're going after that. That's the next step for us. Listen, we got to take a break. We're going to show you when we come back the second piece, which I think the first piece kind of just lays it out for you what he sounds like. Second piece really goes to some very interesting developments, even connected with the morning of the shooting. Keep in mind, you can give us your phone calls, questions, or comments. Also, we're streaming live right now on Facebook at newschannel5.com. Questions and comments coming in there. I'll do what I can to answer your questions there as well with News Channel 5 legal analyst Nick Leonardo right after this.